Hello everyone, welcome back to Garden Fever. I'm Corey Lefebvre, your host. I'm coming to you from northern Utah in the United States. Today we're going to be talking about this plant, the Dracaena. It's also known as the mass cane and the corn plant, however those are nicknames. This native to South Africa plant, it's tropical, grows through the zones of 10 and 11 in its natural environment. Doesn't like direct light, so if you are growing it in those zones, keep in mind it has to have filtered to shade. It's a low light plant. However, most people grow this plant indoors. And so today we're going to be going over what you need to take care of it, some of the problems you run into, what type of soil it likes, and all those fun questions that all of us gardeners and plant growers love to hear. With that, we'll get right into it. Don't forget to stay all the way to the end. I'm going to throw in some bonus tips in the end that you may enjoy, and we'll go from there. So the ideal temperature you want for this plant is somewhere between 60 and 75. However, it is a forgiving plant. You can vary a little bit. It does like high humidity, keep that in mind, which makes it a good house plant because we tend to keep our houses a steady temperature throughout the year, and that makes it, and with the low light, it makes it a good plant for indoors. Celsius about 15 to 24 degrees Celsius. That's the bullseye, what you're kind of aiming for, but it can vary a little bit. It is a forgiving plant. Okay, the height, it'll grow between 4 to 6 feet. As you can see, this plant is maybe a little shy of 6 feet. I'm 5'9" and it is taller than me, so give or take. And I've had it for several years. So the light, it likes indirect light. It can grow in low light. It doesn't like direct light at all, and I've learned this through experience. Some of the red tips that you see is because of me in my ignorance when I was first learning how to grow this plant, had an indirect light and it can burn. So water depends on various things. Depends what kind of potting mix or soil, if you have soil, that you're growing it in. It will grow in all types of soils. It's very forgiving when it comes to that as well. It's a very easy plant to grow. So, roughly about once a week. I do spray mine with a spray bottle every once in a while just to kind of give it some humidity. But you just kind of want to gauge it by the plant itself. So a good way to check is to stick your finger into the pot, and if you go down an inch and it's still moist, just let it be. It can dry out relatively fully before you want to re-water it. Also, water it next to the stalks. I've learned that too, because the roots don't spread very far. It's a cane plant, or a cane type of plant, and they don't really spread out very far, so they are kind of close to the stems themselves. And like I was saying, the soil or potting mix that you need, it just has to be well drained. That's the main thing. It's a very forgiving plant, and any kind of local potting mix that you, or compost mix that you have, will more likely be sufficient for it. Some of the biggest problems that you'll see is these brown tips. And I wanted to take a little bit of time on that because this is a very common problem, and I've actually received several emails and questions when it comes to that. There are various things that can cause this. So I want to go over all of those kind of in depth, if you don't mind, because they all can contribute to that, and this plant is very sensitive to these things. So one is overwatering, and that tends to be the most common problem because I think that people don't realize the shallow root system, or the root system that doesn't spread very far from the cane, and so they kind of soak the whole pot, and it takes it a while to dry out, and the result of that is if it sits in too much water is you'll get these yellow leaves. Another thing that can cause it is fluoride and barin in the water. Now I was a little on the fence because I know gardening can be subjective, and I know there's all kinds of variables that can be different for people. So I was a little unsure on that. For those of you who follow my channel and follow me regularly, you would know that I just moved into this home not too long ago, less than a year. Well, we're approaching a year, but it hasn't been that long. And I lived in another house, and in that other house the city had agreed to put fluoride in the water. I did gather some rainwater and had some filters, but how it affected my plants, I started to notice brown tip. And I wasn't sure if that was the exact cause or if it was some of these other things that I'm going to share today, like the watering. So I found out that in my new home, the city and the people had voted no fluoride in the water. And ironically enough, the new growth that I have seen has very little to no brown tip. Now, I don't know if I'm just watering it better or if it's the actual fluoride, but I wanted to share that with everyone because, so I would recommend harvesting rainwater if you can, or a fluoride filter. Another thing that can be a cause to brown tip is simple acclimation. If the cane plant or the Dracaena is a very slow grower. I've learned this over time. It doesn't grow fast in a very fast capacity. So it acclimates, and if you change its environment suddenly, you tend to get brown tip or leaves that will yellow and you'll lose some leaves. It's an acclimation thing. After it acclimates to the new environment, it tends to sprout new leaves and look better. So keep that in mind too. If you're moving it around a lot, it takes a while for this plant to acclimate. It's a very slow growing plant. So if you get wrinkly stalks, like an old person, if you will, like an old finger or something, that's a sign of underwatering. And if you get mushy stalks, that's a good sign of overwatering. You'll also get yellow leaves and brown tip for that too. So there should be warning signs long before you get a mushy stalk. If you notice that mine kind of lean, if you see that, it's because it's leaning towards the light or it wasn't put in straight. Mine actually leaned heavy when I got it. It was a hand-me-down. And I cut it off in various places because it was just leaning too far. It was very top-heavy. And I stuck the canes and rooted them, and that's where you get these smaller canes. A lot of times people will set one higher, one kind of in the middle, and one lower to kind of even out the foliage. Over time, you'll have to kind of cut back on the foliage because they will kind of overgrow. Now this Dracaena has the very dark stripe in it. It's very dark green. The more popular one has a lighter green stripe in the middle. That is the more popular one. This one is the lesser popular one. Now every once in a while, if your conditions are right and you are taking care of your Dracaena very well and good, it will sprout a flower. Indoors it's not very common, maybe once every even 5 to 10 years. When it does, it sprouts these white flowers, which actually smell really good, but they tend to drip a sap or some sort of a nectar or something. I'm not sure. We'll have to look it up. Anyone that has comments and knows this, maybe you can put it in the comments. But it'll drip this liquid, and it'll drip on the leaves, and it'll drip on your floor. So it's best to just prune it, clip it off, unless you like the fragrance and don't mind cleaning it up. But it can get sticky. It will purify air. It is an air purifier. However, it's not necessarily on the top of the list. Any plant that creates photosynthesis will be an air purifier in some way. Most plants actually do. They're natural air filters, everyone, so more plants the better is what I think. Okay, I kind of wanted to show you some leaf damage here. Let's zoom in and focus so you can see. That's actually done by my kids. So those of you who have kids and grandkids and whatnot, they can be pretty damaging to your plants. But I just wanted to let you know that's not from a disease or anything. That's just straight up damage from my kids. The most common pest for the Dracaena is the mealbug. Your best defense against it is just to have a healthy plant. That really is the best defense. If you got a real healthy plant, it more than likely won't come down with them. But if for some chance you do, just take a washcloth and wipe off all the leaves. It's a good idea to do that anyway, because dust will collect on these and the plant won't be able to breathe as well. So giving them a good wipe every once in a while is not a bad idea. This can be propagated through by cuttings, and as you can see right here, and I'll bring you up a little closer, I just cut off the stalks and stuck them in there and kept the soil kind of moist for a while until it rooted, and voila, I've got new canes. So it's pretty easy to do, or I could have stuck it in another pot and rooted it there. I also have, once I did that, I got other little ones that shot off, so it might be good to do that every once in a while. Just keep in mind that it takes a long time, which can kind of make it a hard transplant if you're going to use a cutting, because sometimes you'll cut the stalk and you'll stick it in a pot and it'll be there for a long time and you aren't exactly sure if it took or not. I don't have an exact time. I'm not exactly 100% sure on how long it takes before you'll start seeing life, but you'll see little green nodes start sticking out of the stem, and then you know it took. If you don't ever see that, then eventually you're going to have to just pull it out and start over. With that, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have any questions on this plant, let me know. Email me. All that is in the description. Or you can just leave a comment. I'm pretty good about replying to comments. YouTube's kind of like my social media. I don't get into the other stuff as much. I kind of tried to, but I just couldn't get into the Facebook thing as much as the YouTube. So I find YouTube to be the better social media for me. Anyway, with that being said, thanks for watching. I do appreciate it. Thanks to all my subscribers. You guys are just awesome. I really love the audience out there. Like, share, subscribe, and bell, and let's make the world a paradise one yard at a time. We can do it.